All right, so what we're going to do today, if you notice, it says quadratic again, right? Yeah, sadly, because you're like, oh, we've already graphed quadratic graphs. Quadratic graphs that we've been graphing have always looked like this. You don't have to write this part down. I just want to show you in the background what they've looked like. They have always looked like this. Y equals A, parenthesis, X minus H all squared plus K. That is what we call vertex form. Why is it vertex form? Because you can easily pick out the vertex. It's the H and the K. Now, today, if you notice, what form do they tell you they're in today? Standard form. Standard form is not the same as this. This is what standard form looks like. Standard form looks like that. Does that have any parentheses and resemble that at all? Does this one resemble this at all? No. So when it's in standard form, you're going to have to use something different. You're not going to be able to just pick out the vertex and look at it. So that's what today's about, how to graph. Yes? Nope. Okay, so what does standard form look like? Well, standard form I just showed you, but what's it look like as a formula? The formula for standard form, things are in standard, or quadratics are in standard form when it looks like this. AX squared plus BX plus C. Y equals AX squared plus BX plus C. All right, so that's the first thing you're going to have to decide. Is it in this form or is it in this old form that we already know? If it's in the new form, then it has different ways to find the vertex. So open this flap up, and if you notice, the flap says finding the vertex, axis of symmetry, and y-intercept. We're going to find all of that in standard form. So open this up, and at the top is like your guide. So if you want to find the vertex, then you're going to do x equals, the vertex of the x is equal to opposite of b over 2a. Then you sub your x into your equation to find y. The y-intercept is going to be the c value. So remember, this one said ax squared plus bx plus c, right? The c has a significance here. It is the y-intercept. Now, why is that? If you're on the y-axis, your x is what number? If you have a dot on the y-axis, what is your x number? 0. So if you put a 0 in here and a 0 in here, what are you left with? That would wipe out, that would wipe out. You'd be left with C. So that is your y-intercept. When x is 0, the y-intercept is whatever C is. Okay, and then the axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry is where you fold. And we already went through axis of symmetry on the last one. The axis of symmetry is the x-coordinate of the what? X-coordinate of the vertex. Very good. X-coordinate of the vertex. All right, so we'll go through that again. So let's remind you of all that, and then let's practice. Okay, so number one, the first thing you want to notice is this standard form or vertex form? Standard form. And if it's standard form, to get the vertex, I have to use this little mini formula. X equals opposite of b over 2a. So write that down so we memorize that. X equals opposite of b divided by 2a. All right, so where do all these a's and b's and the x's come from? All right, a was the number in front of what? Let's go back to here. A is the number in front of x squared, b is the number in front of x, and c is the number at the end. So our a, what number is in front of x squared here? 1. I always like to write these to the side, especially when we get to quadratic formula, it's helpful. Our b is the number in front of x, what would that be? 2. And our c is the number at the end, which was 3. Okay, so there's our numbers we're going to use. So it's opposite of b. No, that's not a 6. It's a b. So opposite of b would be what? -2. -2 divided by 2 times a, and a is how much? 1. Now remember, if you're going to type that in on your calculator, you have a fraction button, or you can do it in your head. Okay? So what's 2 times 1? That's where you would start if you're doing it in your head, 2. So it's negative 2 divided by 2, which makes what? Negative 1. Very good. So remember, the question was find the vertex. All we know so far, I'm going to put a V for vertex. All we know so far is that the x of the vertex is what number? Negative 1. Well, a vertex also has a what? A y. We still need to get y.
Wouldn't it be 3?
No, to get, that's the y-intercept. That's where it hits the y-axis. So to get the y of the vertex, you are going to sub x into the equation to find y. So you just want the y when x is negative 1, right? So that means you're going to put negative 1 in for the x's up here. So it's going to say y equals, now, if you put negative 1 in, there's a reason I picked this one. If you put negative 1 in and you want to square it, what do you have to use around negative 1? Parentheses. Parentheses, negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 3. Now, you are only doing that in your head if you're really good at math, because some of you are still messing this up. Otherwise, you type that all in on one line and you hit enter. So that gives you a 1 minus 2 plus 3. So negative 1 plus 3 gives you, what do y'all get? Positive 2. All right, so then your vertex is at negative 1 comma what? 2. Very good. And then let me show you what this looks like so far. I didn't put a little graph paper, but I'll just show you on mine. So negative 1 comma 2 is the vertex. So left 1 up 2. So there's your vertex. What is the y-intercept? Yeah, remember the y-intercept is the C number at the end? So you just have to memorize that. What's the y-intercept? 0 comma 3. All right, so if I go over to my graph and I put 0 comma 3 for my y-intercept, 1, 2, 3, that would be right here. Remember, this is the vertex, which means that is the line I have to fold on. So where does this dot go?
To the other side.
Yeah, to the other side. I could just reflect it over here. So now do I have a parabola? Yeah, so my graph is done. So that's how you would graph it, and we're going to graph it in a minute. But what is the axis of symmetry here? X equals the x of the vertex. Remember, it's this dotted line through the vertex? X equals negative 1. It's the x coordinate of the vertex. All right, good. So anybody got any questions with that?